So we are up to 38 resignations from Boris Johnson's government. Just behind me, every time I'm looking at the camera, just behind the camera, there are a huge group of photographers waiting potentially for the shot that might be on the front pages tomorrow. I raise their lenses. I'm always thinking perhaps I should look over my shoulder and check what they're looking at. Now, just keep in mind that we have that report from the Times. Pretty Patel has complained to Boris Johnson that she feels that he needs to step down because he doesn't have the support of the Conservative Party. Times reporting that. And by late Tuesday, 10 ministers are able to that was after the cabinet minister Sajid Javid, Rishi Sunak, and now up to 38 resignations, including several ministers. They include Will Quinton, the Minister for Children and Families, who said in his resignation letter that he felt he had no choice but to quit after he'd given media interviews on Monday, repeating assurances that he'd been given by the number 10 team that Mr Johnson was not aware of specific allegations of sexual misconduct against the former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher. Downing Street was to acknowledge a day later that in fact the Prime Minister did in her resignation letter to the Prime Minister.
You can measure the trouble you're in by the number of cameras stationed outside your front door. The Prime Minister only had to glance out of the window to know he's in very serious straits. Is
it all over, Prime Minister?
A defiant wave as he left the Prime Minister's questions, but to ever-increasing numbers in his party, he's a leader who's run out of answers. As his convoy headed into Parliament, the resignations from his government continued to roll in. His greatest danger now, not the delighted benches opposite him, but the frozen faces of the party behind him. Characteristic of him that he tried to make light of it.
This morning, Mr. Speaker, I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to duties in this House, I expect I shall have further such meetings later today.
But that laughter soon died with this.
What a pathetic spectacle. The dying act of his political career is to parrot that nonsense. And as for those who are left, only in office because no one else is prepared to debase themselves any longer, the charge of the lightweight brigade.
The faces of the remaining loyalists on his front bench showing they were not enjoying the line of attack. And then one after the other, his own backbenchers wielded the knife.
Does the Prime Minister think there are any circumstances in which he should resign?
Today I ask him to do the honourable thing.
Take responsibility and resign.
Frankly, Mr. Speaker, the job of a Prime Minister in difficult circumstances when he's been handed a colossal mandate is to keep going, and that's what I'm going to do.
But how long can he go on with ministers deserting him so fast it's hard to keep score? It started with his health secretary, followed by the Chancellor. By the end of yesterday, 8 others had joined them. Before breakfast today, Ministers Laura Trott and Will Quince also resigned. The total so far stands at 38.
Morning, Mr. Javid.
The man who started it all looked pretty buoyant as he left to tell everyone why he'd had to go.
Treading the tightrope between loyalty and integrity has become impossible in recent months. And, Mr. Speaker, I will never risk losing my integrity. And now this week again, we have reason to question the truth and integrity of what we've all been told. And at some point, we have to conclude that enough is enough.
The Prime Minister looked into the middle distance. The expressions on the faces of his party reflected a grimmer story. As well as the ticking tally of resignations, the letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership are piling up. His next date with destiny facing a committee of MPs where 8 out of the 9 Tories questioning him had already withdrawn their support.
Prime Minister, how's your week going?
Terrific. Like many others.
One committee member on his phone on the left here actually sent his letter of no confidence while the Prime Minister was sitting in front of him.
I need you to answer this question, Prime Minister.
And with you.
The chair keen to establish that the Prime Minister is prepared to stand down rather than call an early election.
If you have lost the confidence of your MPs and you're required to step down as leader of the Conservative Party, you will not seek to dissolve Parliament.
I think the last thing this country needs, but I'm not going to step down, and the last thing this country needs, frankly, is election.
And still his day was about to get worse.
It's being reported that there's a delegation of your cabinet colleagues waiting in Downing Street, including the Chief Whip, the Transport Secretary and your new Chancellor, waiting to tell you when you finish here today that it's time for you to go.
And indeed, some of his cabinet were heading to number 10. The Welsh Secretary, Simon Hart, followed by Grant Shapps.
Is the government collapsing, Mr. Shapps?
And even one of Boris Johnson's staunchest allies, Nadine Dorries. The cornered Prime Minister has made it clear he'll have to be forced out of number 10. Behind this door, his cabinet might be about to try. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
We have to show the EU that we're serious about our negotiations. So I'm going to keep voting for a deal, keep voting for a good deal, and keep voting to stop Labour taking no deal off the table.
Very similar to the complaints that were made last week of inappropriate touching of individuals, and that complaint was upheld, and the Prime Minister was informed by a senior Cabinet Office official that this complaint against Chris Pincher had been upheld.
I spoke with number 10 both yesterday and today, and I asked them firmly and clearly for an answer on this, and I've been given categorical assurance that the Prime Minister was not aware of any serious specific allegation with regards to the former Deputy Chief Whip.
He was told that the Permanent Secretary had taken the necessary action. No issue, therefore, arose about remaining as a minister. And last week, when fresh allegations arose, the Prime Minister did not immediately recall the conversation in late 2019 about this incident. As soon as he was reminded, the number 10 press office corrected their public lines.
But I haven't concluded that the problem starts at the top. That is not going to change. I have concluded that the problem starts at the top, and I believe that is not going to change. And that means that it is for those of us in a position who have responsibility to make that change.
I think Rishi Sunak has just resigned. I'm just getting this through on my phone, a tweet here from Rishi Sunak saying, the Chancellor saying the public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. I recognise this may be my last ministerial job, but I believe these standards are worth fighting for. This is why I am resigning.
A former top civil servant says Boris Johnson was briefed in person about a formal complaint concerning the MP Chris Pincher's behaviour, directly contradicting the account from Downing Street.
I know that the senior official briefed the Prime Minister in person because that official told me so at the time.
This constant charade just will not wash. These latest disturbing allegations about the ministerial misconduct are all about abuse of power. And there is one common fault, Mr. Speaker, with the system currently that the Minister spoke about, and that's the power that's granted by this Prime Minister.
But frankly, Mr. Speaker, the job of a Prime Minister in difficult circumstances...
Boris is battling back.
...mandate is to keep going. And that's
refusing to admit his time as Britain's Prime Minister is up.
And that we are seeing, and it shows the government is firmly on the side of the British people, and we're on your side. But what we're doing is not just using our fiscal firepower to help people. Right now, we're also taking the steps that are necessary to bear down on the costs over the medium and the long term. Reforming our energy market, reforming our housing markets.
He claims that no rules were broken. He claims he didn't know what was happening in his own house last Christmas. I don't believe him. His MPs don't believe him, and nor do the British public. He's taking the public for fools, and it's becoming dangerous.
And then, at 10:10, MP Chris Skidmore posted a no-confidence letter online, in which he wrote, "This is an extremely grave situation that is tantamount to an effective cover-up of sexual abuse that would never have been tolerated in any normal functioning workplace." Mr Johnson denies a cover-up related to Chris Pincher, but through the morning the calls for him to go continued. At around 11:10, the MP Tom Hunt joined in.
He's a great man. That's why I've been sick time. I've been asked that. Hours. God bless you. Thank you so much.
the Cabinet now against him, Mr Risbach?
I'm fully supporting the Prime Minister.
What about the Cabinet? What about the rest of the Cabinet, sir?
Ask them. The Prime Minister has an 80 majority and he has my support.
Why are you saying he
Organised at 11:45, Jason Groves of the Daily Mail reported Tory source says 1922 committee drawing up contingency plans for leadership hustings to start as soon as Monday, but that would require the PM to be gone this week. And with the minutes ticking down to Prime Minister's questions, Sebastian Payne at the FT assessed Boris Johnson's mindset. Moments later, Prime Minister's questions began, with the opposition leader Keir Starmer on the attack. The Prime Minister gave this response. As Prime Minister's questions played out, another resignation, number 17, arrived. Joe Churchill wrote, recent events have shown integrity, competence and judgment are all essential to the role of Prime Minister, while a jocular, self-serving approach is bound to have its limitations. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer continued his attacks. Attacks came from Tories too. And as the criticism mounted, Boris Johnson insisted once more that he would carry on. Watching all of this with the Daily Mirror's Pippa Creo, you had a question. Where is Michael Gove, she asked. It wasn't clear, certainly not on with Boris Johnson on the front bench. And as we digested Prime Minister's questions, within minutes, Sajid Javid was explaining his resignation. And then, Mr Javid cut to the chase. And as Sajid Javid sat down, Mr Johnson left the chamber, and the Speaker had a message, as did Labour MPs. Just after 1 o'clock, the government spokesman dealt with the idea of the Prime Minister saying goodbye, saying he would contest and win the confidence vote. Asked if that was definitely the case, he said yes. And by now, ministers were resigning in groups. 5 colleagues wrote, in good faith, we must ask that for the good of the party and the country, you step aside. Their resignations brought the total to 26. By 2:30, Sky News political editor Beth Rigby had this update. She said just spoken to another loyal cabinet minister who told Beth, the game is up, this is not survivable. I'm in the trenches with it, but we're outgunned, outmanoeuvred and out of ammunition. That minister was in the trenches. At 3 p.m, the Prime Minister was at a parliamentary select committee. It included a range of subjects, including a question on food production. And we had this update from Mr Johnson. One of those asking the questions opted to multitasking. While MP for Merriman was talking about fuel duty, on social media he released the letter of no confidence. And while Boris Johnson talked with the committee, the situation elsewhere was escalating. And at about 4:20, BBC's political reporter Ione Wells tweeted this. That
I'm here for them because some of them are fighting, some of them are refugees, some of them they sit there with families, some of the families are there. So, and I feel that each time they speak with each of them, that's the way that we try to help them, apart from trying to support economically, but as well And we support the effort because I'm really surprised that and they are very positive about the situation, and they try to think that this is going to be over soon and this is going to be better soon, and that inspires me, and that's why I'm here. I just want to say that. Thank you, and I really hope everything is going to be better soon. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, international community. Thank you that you stand with us, with people of Ukraine, with all people of the democratic world. Your presence is of the highest importance, and thanks to you, the world really sees that we are all in this together. Glory to you, international community. Thank you. And now we'll have Ukrainian. Please give a round of applause. Ukrainian and Kharkov.
Я хочу, щоб ми разом з вами заспівали «Червону руку». Можемо заспівати з вами «Червону руку»? Тоді давайте разом підтримаємо наших хлопців. Я хочу вам подякувати і хочу попросити одне: не забуваємо, що в нас іде війна, збираємося якомога більше людей, щоб весь світ відчував, що ми хвилюємося, що ми живемо цим. Я обов'язково при нагоді, ось я буду десь 16 липня, я вже буду на передовій. Я вже хлопцями, ми вже поїдемо знов там, де бомблять, там вже це все відчувається. Я передам обов'язково, які кльові, які підтримують нас.
The whole world to know about what's happening in Ukraine, about Russia's war in Ukraine. Thank you, international community. And very, very soon, me, my musical band, and my friends, we will be at the front line ourselves. So I will definitely let them know how you support them, because I know that this is very extremely, this is of the highest importance to them, to know that the world supports Ukraine. Thank you.
У полоні печалі, може десь в лісах, і часі я шукала, сонце руду знайшла, і мене щарувала, червону руку не шукає вечора, ти у мене і на тільки ти. Твоя вода, твоя чистая вода, твоя чистая вода, бачу я дібро обсиле, по забутніх стежках, ти приходиш до мене, і не треба нести. Не квітку на ті, бо давно вже ти вийшла в мої мрії. Червону руку не шукає вечора, ти у мене і ти на тільки ти. Твоя рода, твоя чистая вода, твоя чистая вода, синий, твоя чистая вода, синий,
Thank you, Kharkov. Good luck with everything. Today, we will work Ukrainian national
We are not involved. And hopefully, this work will be stopped very soon. It's definitely real, but we need to make sure that we will do everything we can and stop very soon. Please come here. Please carry on everything. Hope you share the issues that are being
Well, he's not showing any signs so far of accepting his request, and he doesn't think it's inevitable. And part of this story is the 1922 committee, and people who don't follow Westminster politics in detail won't necessarily know an awful lot about how it works. You have experience of that. Just tell us about how this committee, which represents backbench Tory MPs, fits in to the way that the Conservative Party selects its leader. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Yes, there were some reports that perhaps that vote would change and having a second vote of confidence on Monday.
Already got a mandate from the last.
So don't necessarily hold me to that, but we think that's what's happening. Now, a couple of other updates for you. Douglas Ross, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, the regular critic of Boris Johnson, says more and more of his colleagues now agree with him that Boris Johnson should resign.
Did you tell him? It's a game up, Mrs. Doris.
Doris, you speak to me.
How many children does he have? Did he say Prime Minister? How many children does he have? Is anyone else backing the Prime Minister?
Well, as much as I could make it out, it sounded like Nadine Dorries was saying that she was still offering her support for the Prime Minister. Watch the clip back, it was quite difficult to make out. She had a couple of things there. It didn't sound, it looked like a woman who was emerging to tell us that she'd switched sides and now thought Boris Johnson should go, but we'll double check on that. But with a couple of words, Nadine Dorries, as Culture Secretary, former member of Boris Johnson's cabinet, has headed off. Yesterday, after seeing Boris Johnson, she must have been in the car, I think, because it was only within a couple of minutes of the meeting, and she said, I'm 100% behind the Prime Minister. We'll see if she tweets something in the coming minutes. Now, eventually, Douglas Ross, leader of the Conservatives in Scotland, saying Boris Johnson should go. Mr. Prime to say he would support in a Tory leadership election. We haven't got to that stage yet. While we wait to see who else comes out of this door, let's listen to a little bit of the Prime Minister's questions. And then the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, had this message for those who continue to support Mr Johnson. Tim Loughton was one of a number of backbench Tory MPs who didn't pull their punches as they addressed the Prime Minister. So, that is some of the clips from earlier in Prime Minister's questions. A couple of other updates for you. David Simmons, Tory MP for Ruislip, Northwood and Pinner, says the Prime Minister should go, as the message has been very clear from colleagues. On the issue of the 1922 committee, he says there were a couple of people who would agree that he should not go on. While there was one person I could think of, but other than that, no. I think it was a strong view across the piece. One member of the 1922 committee saying not many people were arguing for Boris Johnson. This story is evolving at speed. We are waiting to hear more on the discussions happening inside Number 10 between Boris Johnson and his most senior cabinet members. Priti Patel is suggesting he should go. Looking Boris looked like she was still being supportive. We'll keep you up to date as this continues to evolve.
Yeah, but I mean, if he's going, he's going to get it.
Ian, what did Boris say? Yes, fine.
Hello. Here we are again. I'm back on the talk.
Gents, unless you're doing lives, you can't really have your congregating out outside here. Yeah. Barriers are there. You need to be sort of semi behind the barriers if you can. If you're doing lives. No problem.
What are we doing? We're not just doing a full rerun of the top of the 7.
All 5 on that one. What was on yours? All 3.
We have to show the EU that we're serious about our negotiations. So I'm going to keep voting for a deal, keep voting for a good deal, and keep voting to stop Labour taking no deal off the table.
Very similar to the complaints that were made last week of inappropriate touching of individuals, and that complaint was upheld, and the Prime Minister was informed by a senior Cabinet Office official that this complaint against Chris Pincher had been upheld.
I spoke with Number 10 both yesterday and today, and I asked them firmly and clearly for an answer on this, and I've been given categorical assurance that the Prime Minister was not aware of any serious specific allegation with regards to the former Deputy Chief Whip.
He was told that the Permanent Secretary had taken the necessary action. No issue, therefore, arose about remaining as a minister. And last week, when fresh allegations arose, the Prime Minister did not immediately recall the conversation in late 2019 about this incident. As soon as he was reminded, the Number 10 press office corrected their public lines.
But I haven't concluded that the problem starts at the top. That is not going to change. I have concluded that the problem starts at the top, and I believe that is not going to change. And that means that it is for those of us in a position who have responsibility to make that change.
I think Rishi Sunak has just resigned. I'm just getting this through on my phone, a tweet here from Rishi Sunak saying the Chancellor saying the public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. I recognise this may be my last ministerial job, but I believe these standards are worth fighting for. This is why I am resigning.
A former top civil servant says Boris Johnson was briefed in person about a formal complaint concerning the MP Chris Pincher's behaviour, directly contradicting the account from Downing Street.
I know that the senior official briefed the Prime Minister in person because that official told me so at the time.
This constant charade just will not wash. These latest disturbing allegations about the ministerial misconduct are all about abuse of power. And there is one common fault, Mr. Speaker, with the system currently that the Minister spoke about, and that's the power that's granted by this Prime Minister.
But frankly, Mr. Speaker, the job of a Prime Minister in difficult circumstances...
Boris is battling back,
mandate is to keep going. And that's
refusing to admit his time as Britain's Prime Minister is up.
And that we are seeing, and it shows the government is firmly on the side of the British people, and we're on your side, but what we're doing is not just using our fiscal firepower to help people right now, we're also taking the steps that are necessary to bear down on costs over the medium and the long term as well. Reforming our energy markets, reforming our housing markets.
He claims that no rules were broken. He claims he didn't know what was happening in his own house last Christmas. I don't believe him. His MPs don't believe him, and nor do the British public. He's taking the public for fools, and it's becoming dangerous.
Prime Minister was Grant Shapps. Now he's part of this group suggesting the time may be up. The Business Secretary, President Bartek, has also told the Chief Whip that he thinks Boris Johnson should go. I should also mention Michael Gove, hugely significant figure within this government, prominent Brexiteer dating back to 2016, one of the big beasts of Boris Johnson's cabinet, and wasn't on the front bench for Prime Minister's questions. We understand he's told the Prime Minister the time is up. All of this spiraled from a moment around 6 p.m. yesterday when we had those two resignations, one after the other. First of all, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, went. then the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. And in the House of Commons a little bit earlier, just after Prime Minister's questions, Sajid Javid made his resignation statement. One reference in that statement from Sajid Javid concerns the story that's dominated the last week, those allegations of sexual misconduct aimed at Chris Pincher, the former Deputy Chief Whip. And the story emerged towards the end of last week. Number 10 said Boris Johnson wasn't aware of any explicit allegations. Through the weekend, they said no, he wasn't aware. Monday, they said no, he wasn't aware. Then, after a story broken by my colleague Ione Wells on Monday night, on Tuesday, Number 10 said actually Boris Johnson had been told about them, but he'd forgotten. Now, among those who have gone into Downing Street in the last few hours is the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, who was spotted walking past the Red Lion pub just outside of Downing Street and then through here and in to see the Prime Minister. He represents, via this committee, Conservative backbenchers. Here's our political editor Chris Mason on how they fit in. Prime Minister may go this evening, as Chris was saying. We just don't know. He's got 4 hours left if he does think the time has come. Though all of his public statements today and all the days previously have suggested he's definitely not going to be able to do that. And watching all of this is the opposition Labour Party. The Shadow Home Secretary in Cooper has been speaking to BBC's political correspondent David Lockhart for her thoughts on the day.
Люди хочу заспівати пісню, яка народилась на третій день повномасштабного вторгнення. Ми з хлопцями зустрічали в нашому місті Вінниці Київ, Харків. І ми з хлопцями сиділи нас і бачили наших колег. Ми зачепили кілька в приміщенні, там було сховище і власне. І ми там, де люди сиділи, коробки збили, там збили ліжечка, ми будували з ними, ми зустрічали, нас була комплексна людина. Ми дуже було так не слова, це було страшно, ми не знали, хотіли написати пісню, я пам'ятаю, що ми сіли на кухня і написали пісню.
I just wanted to share the personal story of my life. So the Indian full invasion of Russia in Ukraine, we decided that we will use sacred people. So we will be hiding there and other people to find shelter there. Once it was February around the time, we've been sitting there with other people crying in the shelter, in the morning, and people were very stressed, and it was a time when I this song it just came to my mind.
Saturday from 4 till 6 and Sunday 3 till 5. Miss what is so free in the
I think your experience is
to donate watching radio, charitable events, thank you, international community. See you soon.
And as you consider the runners and riders who would be involved if Boris Johnson were to go, help me understand the differences between these people, because there'd be so much focus on Boris Johnson and his personality and his leadership style that perhaps the policy differences within the Conservative Party have not received much of an airing today.
How many children does he have?
Can I just ask you, Cindy, what you make of all of these Conservatives saying they have concerns about Mr. Johnson's relationship with the truth, whether he's trustworthy? These would be concerns that were raised when he was a journalist, when he was mayor of London, when he was named a member of other governments, and now that he's Prime Minister. Do you think these concerns are new?
Look at his full name. You can go take a seat. Who has created this entry? This is the Florida. Look at this. Oh, 40 pages. Wondering.
Honourable friend, the Prime Minister, and members from right across this House when we broke bread together at the Parliamentary Prayer Breakfast. And we listened, all of us, to the words of Reverend Les Isaac, who spoke about the fact that responsibility
Yeah. That was cute. That sounds interesting too. Yeah.
Our day together. You, I, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, and members from right across this house, where we broke bread together at the parliamentary prayer breakfast. And we listened, all of us, to the words of Reverend Les Isaac, who spoke about the fact that responsibility that comes with leadership, the responsibility to serve the interests of others above your own, and to seek common ground of your party, your community, and above all, your country. Now, colleagues will be forgiven for my sense of déjà vu. Despite what it might seem, I am not one of life's quitters. I quit when I was told that boys like me don't do maths. I didn't quit when old school bankers said I didn't have the right school ties. And I didn't quit when people in my community said that I should not marry the love of my life. I care deeply about public service and giving back to this country that has given me so much. That is why, when I got the call from my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, just over a year ago, I didn't hesitate to serve again. It was a critical time for our country. Tough decisions needed to be made about when we were going to come out of lockdown, about supporting the National Health Service and the care sector under unprecedented strain. It has been an absolute privilege of my life to have been trusted with these responsibilities, and I can only hope that my best has been good enough. It has undoubtedly also been one of the toughest roles that I've had so far. The gravity of Home Office decisions, the scale of Treasury decisions, but nothing matters more than the health of your people, of the British people, especially and in the wake of a pandemic. Caring for people's health and well-being is truly a noble vocation. And so I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all of those across the country working in health and care sectors, as well as those that I worked so closely with in my old department, DHSC, and in the NHS. There is so much that I planned for the long-term reform of our health and care systems, and it is a wrench to leave that important work behind. Now, when I last gave a personal statement from this seat, I spoke about the importance of institutions and conventions. Today, it is about the importance of integrity. And don't worry, there's not going to be a series of these. Institutions and integrity are both central pillars that underpin our great democracy. It doesn't matter what your political perspective is in this House. I believe that we are all motivated by the national interest, and that the public expects us all of us, to maintain honesty and to maintain integrity in whatever we do. This is not an abstract matter. We've seen in great democracies what happens when divisions are entrenched and not bridged. We cannot allow that to happen here. We must bring the country together as one nation. Effective governance inevitably requires loyalty and collective responsibility. Of course it does. And I'm instinctively a team player. And I have completely focused on governing effectively over the last year. But treading the tightrope between loyalty and integrity has become impossible in recent months. And, Mr. Speaker, I will never risk losing my integrity. I also believe a team is as good as its team captain, and that a captain is as good as his or her team. So loyalty must go both ways. The events of recent months have made it increasingly difficult to be in that team. It's not fair on ministerial colleagues to go out every morning defending lines that don't stand up and don't hold up. It's not fair on my parliamentary colleagues who bear the brunt of constituents' dismay in their inboxes and on their doorsteps in recent elections. And it's not fair on Conservative members and voters who rightly expect better standards from the party they supported. when the first stories of parties in Downing Street emerged late last year, I was personally assured at the most senior level by my Right Honourable Friend's then team that, and I quote, there had been no parties in Downing Street and no rules were broken. So I gave the benefit of doubt. And I went on those media rounds to say that I'd had those assurances from the most senior level of the Prime Minister's team. Then we had more stories. We had the Sue Gray report, a new Downing Street team. I continued to give the benefit of the doubt. And now this week again, we have reason to question the truth and integrity of what we've all been told. And at some point, we have to conclude that enough is enough. I believe that point is now. I welcome the Prime Minister's public acknowledgement last night that matters could have been handled better in who he appointed and what was said about what he knew when. And I appreciated his kind, humble words and his humble spirit when I went to see him yesterday, and also the kind letter that he has sent to me. But I do fear that the reset button can only work so many times. There's only so many times you can turn that machine on and off before you realise that something is fundamentally wrong. Last month, I gave the benefit of doubt one last time. But I haven't concluded. Starts at the top. That is not going to change. I have concluded that the problem starts at the top, and I believe that is not going to change. And that means that it is for those of us in a position who have responsibility to make that change. I wish my Cabinet colleagues well, and I can see they have decided to remain in the Cabinet. They will have their own reasons. But it is a choice. I know just how difficult that choice is. But let's be clear, not doing something is an active decision. I am deeply concerned about how the next generation will see the Conservative Party on our current course. Our reputation, after 12 years in government, depends on regaining the public's trust. This is not just a personal matter. The philosophy and perception of Conservatives depends on it. It is central to the Conservative ideal that we believe in decency, in personal responsibility, and in social justice enabled by conviction. The Conservative mission to extend freedom and prosperity opportunity is all at risk if we cannot uphold that ideal. And, Mr. Speaker, it is not only the Conservative Party is not the only great institution in need of urgent repair. Like everyone in this House, I have been dismayed by the drip of stories of harassment and worse by members of this House. So I'm also concerned about how the next generation will see this House and the health of our democracy. In recent years, trust in our roles has been undermined through a series of scandals. But the one thing we can control is our own values and behaviours. So it is incumbent on all of us to set high standards for ourselves and to take action when they are not met by others. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the messages of support that I've had from many members of this House and beyond. I got into politics to do something, not to be somebody. So it is hard in one way, but not in another. Being a good father, a husband, a son, and a citizen is good enough for me. And if I can continue to contribute to public life and my party from the backbenches, it will be a privilege to do so.
Can I say to the House, there will be no more personal statements today.
Oh, I need to get
Mr. Burke, just before I ask you another question, I should explain that the big bangs in the background are a firework display that's going on not far from Downing Street. Now, one question I've got listening to... That's right. And we also just heard a version of Bohemian Rhapsody as well, so it's all going on here in Downing Street. But one question I've got for you as you communicate with those still MPs within the Conservative Party is, did they make a mistake by choosing Boris Johnson? Because some of the personality traits they're criticising today have been in plain sight for a very, very long time. They chose him because he won elections, they chose him because he did a fantastic job of selling the idea of Brexit, selling the idea of the Conservative Party being in power. But do you think that perhaps they also failed to realise the risks they were taking by choosing him? Well, here's a question I'm sure you can answer. Do you agree with Mr. Johnson's argument that he won a mandate in 2019 and that it's his duty as a leader to stay and deliver that, and to not be allowed to deliver that is to ignore the size of the vote that he received in that election? joining us. Alistair here on the BBC. Now, one thing we need to make clear, earlier on we were reporting that Brandon Lewis had resigned. He has not resigned, so we need to make that clear. Brandon Lewis has not resigned. And if you're watching this political story escalate in the last few days, it's worth us just stepping back a little and reminding ourselves that Boris Johnson has been battling a number of political storms. Last autumn, we had a situation where one of his MPs was found to have broken lobbying rules. It looked like he would be suspended in Parliament for a period of time. Then the Conservatives moved to change the rules around how these processes work. There was an uproar very quickly. The Conservatives did a U-turn and decided not to do that. And Owen Paterson, the MP in question, was to quit. That was damaging for Boris Johnson. Then early in December, we had the beginning of the Partygate stories. And number 10, Mr Johnson said there weren't parties. We didn't break the rules. We stuck to the rules. But as of course you know, over time, more and more reports and gatherings here at number 10 emerged. In time, the police would investigate. In time, Mr Johnson would be fined by the police. We also know that Sue Gray, a senior civil servant, was critical of both political leadership and civil service leadership within 10. That was a huge political buffeting that the Prime Minister
Watson. Yeah, we've got Rob.
It's still going on in some ways.
Oh, is he? So another Watson.
He's looking into whether the Prime Minister knowingly misled Parliament. So questions about Partygate are not going to go away. Then you had a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister. That was a month ago, and while he won it, he didn't win it by as much as some people expected. He took 59% of the vote. So that simply cranked up the pressure still further. Then, a couple of weeks ago, you had two by-elections, one in the north of England, one in the southwest of England. They were interesting for two different reasons. One was a test of whether the Conservatives could defend the northern constituency away from the Labour Party. One was looking at whether the Liberal Democrats could take a seat in the southwest of England that the Tories had originally taken. The Conservatives lost both. The chairman, Oliver Dowden, would resign within hours. Further pressure on Boris Johnson. And then all of that leads up to what's played out in the last few days, which is where you have the former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, having to have the whip removed after new allegations of sexual misconduct and allegations the Prime Minister knew about this and didn't act it. Number 10 said he didn't know about this, and then admitted on Tuesday that in fact some of those allegations had been told the Prime Minister. All of that helps us explain the moment the Downing Street finds itself. Now, a little while ago, Mindy Doris, the Culture Secretary, left number 10, she was on the road and jumped into a car just down here. She was shouted at by a number of journalists, including me, asking whether we ought to know whether she was still supporting the Prime Minister, and this is what she said.
You can go in now quickly.
Now, here is Jacob Young, Conservative Member of Parliament for Redcar and Cleveland, who has just tweeted, I have agonised throughout today. I have supported the Prime Minister through thick and thin. It's because of my loyalty to him that I urge him to now step aside and allow the country to move on. So Jacob Young, Conservative MP in the north-east of England, particularly politically important place for Boris Johnson. It's an area of the country where he has made great progress on behalf of the Conservatives. Well, Jacob Young is saying, I've thought about this, I've agonised about this, but I now think that he should go. So, this is yet more pressure. Speak to Ian Watson. You've got the microphone on.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's one of a number of raising issues demonstrating concentrate on whether Boris Johnson forced us to so for a range of junior ministers, a range of parliamentary aides, a range of associates, and certainly more than 60 people Boris Johnson to go. Crucially, November the 5th, of those associates directly the government out of the parliamentary aides, junior ministers, cabinet ministers, are saying making it much more difficult for the government to function. But the message we're getting is almost out there is that he is going to, on the phrase, fight on and fight to win. As far as he's concerned, he's making the argument that some of the ministers obviously is gives it an 18-seat majority. The success is not the mandate, makes the leadership contest. He's hoping to track this with some very sceptical people, even delivered that it was not too late to join the back. And we also point out there's a couple of people in there. Boris, in the back there was Jacob Rees-Mogg, the entrance to Whitehall, and he said when he came out he was also still supporting the Prime Minister. So the whole of the cabinet hasn't collapsed, but certainly the key cabinet members tonight telling him to go, and the resignations just keep on taking the same amount.
And help me understand one thing I've been wondering all day. To what degree are all these people who are resigning or switching out of office talking to each other, rewarding each other, working as groups to
I don't think that's true. I say that because I know how difficult it was for people to try to get the first talk to take place at all. It's undoubtedly the case that the ministers are talking to each other, but a lot of people are reaching their own conclusions rather than simply saying that resignations all day long. Some ministers we knew were planning to do this or prepared to doing this for some time. What struck me is actually that there's quite a few things that had just like people bringing some of these finding out when you're ready to be on the brink, when you're ready to go, and then up a range of people who are not nihilists, first of all, especially in this time. I think there has been some new things feeling of inevitability, that feeling of inevitability of what by running now.
Ian, thank you very much for staying here. So any further developments, you know where we are. Thanks very much indeed. Let's take a quick reminder of how we got here. Not going all the way back into last year, but just turning to the last few days. Because late last week, this man, Prince Pincher, resigned his deputy chief whip in the field that he'd allegedly brought two men, private members club in London. Before the complaint was made, and he was suspended in time as a Conservative party. It didn't happen immediately. The spokesperson for the Prime Minister said Boris Johnson hadn't been aware of any specific allegations against Mr Pincher when he'd been appointed to that role of Deputy Chief Whip in February. Then, more allegations of inappropriate behaviour came out about Mr Pincher. He denied them. Further questions were asked, though, about whether the Prime Minister had been aware of any complaints against Mr Pincher when that appointment was made in February. Again, this was denied several times by number 10 British press and by various ministers.
A balmy summer's evening, but a political chill in the air, reminiscent of the downfall of Margaret Thatcher. And just like those dramatic events of
On Monday evening, the story about Burley, BBC's Ian Wells revealed that Boris Johnson had been made aware of Boris Johnson's behaviour on Mr Pincher was a Foreign Office Vice President in 2019 and 2020. The complaint led to a disciplinary process which confirmed his conduct. The government's position continued to be that the Prime Minister didn't know about it. Later, though, on Tuesday, Lord Donald, member of the House of Lords, a former senior civil servant, and he revealed that he'd sent a letter to the Parliamentary Commission for Standards stating that the Prime Minister had been briefed in person about a complaint that had been upheld against Mr Pincher in 2019. Suddenly, the official line about what Boris Johnson knew had to change.
A balmy summer's evening, but a political chill in the air, reminiscent of the downfall of Margaret Thatcher. Just like the dramatic events of 1990, we've seen a sizable chunk of the cabinet go in one by one.
Number 10 story was that Boris Johnson had forgotten about what he'd been told, but then had remembered. Mr Johnson has subsequently admitted that he was wrong to appoint Chris Pincher to his government. But the damage was already done. Sajid Javid resigned, Rishi Sunak resigned, that was yesterday, and that is what has triggered this extraordinary political maelstrom which continues to play out here in Downing Street. We will continue with our coverage, of course, both online, bbc.com/news, and here on BBC News 2. Yeah. We're not done yet, are we? Christian's driving. John, thank you very much indeed, John.
partner, like, yeah, quick. Yeah, but I can see them. Yeah,